Tuesday news. Chat the news and listen. Discuss and rediscuss. The difference in not turning me off means 15 hours of time for your own creative work. If you turn me off and fail to listen to the news, you will have 5 extra classes of 3 hours each. It's essential that we become news capable. Our guests were very impressed by that, and it's only proper that we, who are from the system that has oppressed most of mankind, know what our system is still doing. Leonid Brezhnev, General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the USSR, Soviet Union, and the President of the Presidium of the Soviet Union, Supreme Soviet, and Alexei Kosygin, Chairman of the USSR Council of Ministers, have expressed confidence that the relations of unbreakable friendship, genuine good neighborliness, and fruitful cooperation between the Soviet Union and the new Democratic Republic of Afghanistan will constantly grow stronger and develop for the benefit of the peoples of our countries in the interest of peace and security all over the world. In a message sent to Prime Minister Nur Muhammad Tarakai, General Secretary of the Central Committee of the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council on the occasion of Afghanistan's Independence Day, the Soviet leaders, the vanguard of world liberation, wish the people of Afghanistan great success in carrying out the program for democratic and socio-economic transformation. Award for the Vietnamese President. By decree of the Presidium of the USSR Supreme Soviet, the Order of the October Revolution has been awarded to Ton Duc Thang, T-O-N, capital D-U-C, capital T-H-A-N-G, President of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam Reunified, a close ally of the avant-garde of world liberation, the Soviet Union. The award is in recognition of his work in the revolutionary movement and his great contribution to the development and strengthening of fraternal friendship and strengthening all-round cooperation between the USSR and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam on the occasion of his 90th birthday. Leonid Brezhnev has sent a message to congratulation to Ton Duc Thang on his 90th birthday. In his message to the Vietnamese leader, he said that Ton Duc Thang's great services to the world revolutionary movement were well known in the Soviet Union, the avant-garde of world liberation, and that his whole life had been inseparably linked with the struggle of the Communist Party, the vanguard of the working class and the working people of Vietnam, for national liberation and the creation of a peaceful, independent, united socialist Vietnam. The Soviet people held Ton Duc Thang in deep respect as a prominent internationalist and Leninist, and a consistent fighter for the triumph of the ideals of socialism through the world, a loyal associate of the great son of Vietnam President Ho Chi Minh, and an old and sincere friend of the Soviet Union, the message said. Leonid Brezhnev wished Ton Duc Thang good health and further successes in his work for the benefit of the Vietnamese people and in the interest of further strengthening fraternal friendship and fruitful cooperation between the Soviet Union and Vietnam, a close ally of the Soviet Union. News also for Tuesday continues. Israel and Egypt will begin Mid-East peace negotiations on October 12 in Washington, the center of world imperialism. A White House spokesperson for the United States will participate fully in the ministerial level of talks, so the U.S. promises. Earlier today, President Sadat invited President Carter to come to Egypt for the final signing of the proposed Egyptian-Israeli peace sellout, we should call it rather than treaty. Addressing the Egyptian parliament on current Mideast developments, Dictator Sadat of Egypt called on Jordan and other Arab countries directly involved in the conflict with Israel, who have stoutly protested the sellout at Camp David, to join in peace negotiations based on the Camp David sellout agreements, but he strongly denounced the Soviet Union, who has rejected the Middle East Accords. Secretary of State Cyrus Vance continued United States efforts to win Arab support for the Camp David sellout agreements. In talks with Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister in New York, U.S. officials regard Saudi's support as the key element in the success of Mideast negotiations. At this point, Saudi Arabia also, though conservative, if not reactionary government, considers the Camp David summit between Egypt and aggressive expansionist Israel and U.S. imperialism as a sellout of the peoples of the Arab world. The Syrian president continues his efforts to consolidate carriers between the Arab hardline countries and the Soviet bloc. After talks with the East German president, the modern Communist Republic of East Germany is expected to urge East Germany to increase military assistance to the Arabs. He is also expected to make a similar appeal to the Soviet Union when he arrives in Moscow later this month. Moscow, as we say in English. The Lebanese president announced today he is forming a new government in a bid to restore peace throughout the country. The president's remarks were broadcast over Beirut radio on the wake of the worst fighting in the past 3 years. He said he would unveil a new security plan in the next 10 days and appoint a cabinet of political leaders to replace the government technocrats now in office. The latest reports from Beirut indicate that the fighting between Christian fascist and Syrian troops has finally leveled off after clashes throughout the night in Beirut, once one of the most beautiful capitals of the world, surrounding suburbs and nearby mountain areas. No reliable casualty figures have yet been released, but Christian Phalangist fascist spokespersons say as many as 3,000 have been killed and wounded in the clashes over the past 2 days. At the Vatican, 30 cardinals have called for a halt of the bombing of civilian areas in concern for the situation in Lebanon. In Washington, center of world imperialism, the State Department says it is noting the heightened fighting between Christians and Syrians, and the situation is under intense review. Voice of America, of course, attempts to make the burden of responsibility upon the Syrians, but it was Egypt who invaded Lebanon and still occupies southern Lebanon in its Zionist fascist territoriality. The U.S. State Department said that it has not reached a decision on whether to grant a visa to Rhodesian Prime Minister so-called Ian Smith to visit the United States. They said the matter is still under review and that the briefing will continue in the context of developments in South Africa. The foreign members of Rhodesia's biracial government, so-called by Rhodesia, which should be Zimbabwean Patriotic Front under Robert Mugabe, Marxist-Leninist, and his nationalist ally Joshua Nkomo. But the biracial government have been invited by a group of American senators to come to Washington this week to explain their policies. Prime Minister Smith and the Executive Council members applied for visas. The other members of the Council hold British passports and have previously visited the USA. I am certain that the same sellout will take place that USA has shown in other demonstrations of imperial fascism in their foreign policy. USA did lift the ban on economic aid and military aid to the fascist regime of Ian Smith, and I'm sure some way will be found for Ian Smith to be received in honors in Washington, the center of world imperialism. Rhodesia's biracial government closed down the Zimbabwean Times, not to our surprise, the country's only black daily newspaper, which has been moderately critical of the government policy. The government said the newspaper was being shut down in the interest of safety and security. Of course, they would not dare let the black people know that they were being treated as slaves. Even Mahatma Gandhi said long ago, who often white people today in the USA are quoting and mouthing about all the time. Mahatma Gandhi said, though he was a pacifist, he said, if it comes between a choice of slavery and violence, I would accept violence without a hesitant thought. And the time has come that slavery exists in Rhodesia and South Africa, and violence is the only way. Armed struggle, according to Marxist-Leninist views. The newspaper has a circulation of about 20,000 and is owned by a British-based oil corporation and had the support has supported the Anglo-American plan to convene all-party talks with a patriotic front. Guerrilla leaders, whose views were very moderate and often published. The Zimbabwean Times is the fourth black newspaper banned in Rhodesia in the last 11 years, but the first by the biracial government, so-called biracial. There are only 3 blacks in it, Musuea and 2 other religious Uncle Tom leaders. No black people, 97% of the black people of Rhodesia are represented by the Zimbabwean, which is the rightful name of the country, Patriotic Front. Meanwhile, guerrillas the activist liberators attempted to sabotage the railway bridge along the main road linking Salisbury, the capital, with the South African fascist country and its border. The political situation in southern Africa was the subject of the agenda today in Bonn, West Germany, which prides itself as being the successor to Hitler's Third Reich, between Sudan's president and the West Germans' foreign minister. The foreign minister's statement said that the 2 ministers agreed to the recent Camp David Summit Accords must be used as a basis for a broad Mideast settlement which could meet with the approval of all Arab states. The 2 men also have given support to the recent United Nations Security Council resolution to continue Western peace efforts for the Southwestern peace efforts for the territory of Namibia. That, of course, which is being resisted by the Union of South Africa, fascist South Africa, upheld by U.S. tax dollars, which burns my stomach every time I think of it. $447 million alone paid out in the first 3 months of this year, and billions more that came from multinationals. South Africa has a military presence and is denying the right of Namibia to be independent and free. But Africa, all of Africa, is now black and proudly free, except the lower end. Rhodesia and Namibia trembles under the revolutionary might of the people's will. Soon South Africa will feel the thundering and resounding clarion call that 20 million blacks will not be oppressed by a bare 4 million white supremacists. Sudan's president arrived in Bonn yesterday for week-long talks. Full-scale rescue relief operations continued in flood-ravaged districts in Bengal. As overnight rains brought fresh flooding, some 200 people are reported to be missing from villages in the northern districts just last night alone, and another district just outside the state capital of Calcutta, India, reported that hundreds of people are feared to have been washed away, if not thousands, by the swelling floodwaters. The act of God. First good harvest that they'd had in many years, and along comes the monsoons and washes away their harvest and tens of thousands of lives in India. New reports say about 1 million people in the hardest hit areas are dead, are still at some points waiting rescue on high points. Conditions are indeed reported to be grim. Meanwhile, an Indian news agency says 60 persons have drowned, and several are missing in a boating accident. The news agency reported earlier Monday that 150 people died in the accident, and was later said that 72 were rescued. The boat overturned while carrying pilgrims to a religious festival. It seems that God does not protect his own while they're going to bow at his shrines of festivals and worship. Britain's English ruling Labour Party, under the ministry of Prime Minister Callaghan, had a major defeat on Monday by a better than 2-to-1 margin. The Labour Party's annual conference of black people rejected the government's policy. Mr. Callaghan is demanding pay increases to be held to 6%. Over the 5% over the coming year, rather. Callaghan has already warned he may resign if the Labour Party does not back his government's wage and economic policies. The country's Labour policies for blacks and Indians, which are demanding a return to free collective bargaining. The large wage hikes were behind him in his vote. Mr. Callaghan is scheduled to address the Labour Party on Tuesday. If inflation is not kept under control, he will be forced to resign and conduct elections. And Margaret Thatcher, who the polls say will be his successor, head of the Conservative Party, has promised that all Indians and blacks will not have any problems in England. They will all be removed be taken up and rounded up in concentration camps and repatriated to countries that some of them have not seen since their ancestors left it 200 years ago. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of mourners stood in a chill, driving rain Monday to give final respects to Pope John Paul, anti-communist. He died of a heart attack last Thursday night, just 24 days after he began his ministry. Over the weekend, hundreds of thousands of people filed by St. Peter's Basilica, where the body lay in state. Funeral services for Pope John Paul are scheduled for Wednesday. May be moved into Basilica if the rains continue. President Carter's mother, Mrs. Lillian Carter, will lead the American delegation this time. The last time it was Mrs. Carter who went 24 days ago, or 20-some days ago, or 30 days ago when the Pope died just before. God's representative on earth, which the Catholic Church considers the vicar of Rome to be the Pope, the papal seat, over 700 million, which has dropped to nearly 530 million due to the Church's ban on birth control. God's representative on earth does not seem to be faring very well, as he was 65 years of age and died in his sleep. Negotiations are expected to begin this week between Nicaraguan President Somoza, as Voice of America wants to choose to call him, and any other nation with any decency on earth would call him Dictator Somoza, and the opposition regarding resolutions to the country's bloody political crisis. Bloody murder. 3/4 of the nation has been bombed into oblivion. A three-nation team from the United States, the Dominican Republic, and Guatemala will handle mediation. All, of course, are indeed right-wing regimes under the imperialist control of the USA. They'll handle the mediation that plans to meet in the next few days. President Carter is the chief negotiator, and the Dominican Republic has chosen a right-wing governmental aid to be making its representation, and Guatemala the same. USA is so hypocritical. Not one word is mentioned of human rights, while 20,000 are known to have been murdered by the regime, and tens of thousands more are missing. As the government with U.S. military aid, our hearts should ache that our tax dollars have supported such a fascist regime. Only through the aid of new planes and military hardware just received from USA, Somoza's dictatorship has been able to kill his own people and bomb them almost back into the Stone Ages. There have been repeated charges of similar executions and genocide by the Somoza National Guard all through the country. There is no way to estimate, said Voice of Netherlands, the amount of murder that has been done by the Somoza regime, which is vastly supported and totally upheld by Washington. Even the West Germans have been sharply critical of U.S. policies in Nicaragua. They're somewhat critical of the European money market today and the status of the U.S. dollar, as to whether it is stable enough to be maintained as a world major currency. Cambodia, which should have been rightfully called Kampuchea when the Khmer Rouge brought about a communist revolution, which was later taken over by the national settlement, and now has murdered 2 million of the population, 1 out of 3 of the Cambodian people. Human rights violations. UN officials in Geneva released a telegram from Cambodia's foreign minister. Interference in Cambodian affairs were complained about. Again, silence is heard in Washington by President Carter, who is supposed to be the spokesperson for human rights and the dignity of man. But not one word has been heard about the mass murder in Cambodia or the murder, terror, and horror in Nicaragua. Where is Mr. Human Rights now, Carter? At the top of the news this evening, Egypt will begin the next phase of the Mideast peace negotiations in Washington. I suppose October 12 would be the most important thing. The State Department says it has not reached a decision yet on whether to grant the visits to Rhodesians Ian Smith. The newspaper publisher, managing editor of the last remaining black paper, which is just closed, is to appear in court tomorrow under Rhodesia's law, an order act under emergency power regulations, to show cause why he should not be jailed for 10 years. It is charged that he allowed the Zimbabwean position to publish material not cleared by the military censor of the 3% element that is ruled by the fascist Ian Smith. Again, the white regime of Rhodesia, which could not be upheld if U.S. Congress had not lifted its ban of economic aid and military assistance a few weeks ago. Of course, news had shown all along that the multinationals had been supporting, and even the CIA supporting, the white regime, the 3%, against the 97% of Zimbabwe, that is under the control of the Zimbabwean Public National Liberation Front. In the printed an allegedly false statement about the leadership of Ian Smith, accusing him of being an oppressive dictator, which is the truth, he will face 10 years. The paper regularly carried the views of externally based nationalist leader Joshua Nkoma and Robert Mugabe, Marxist-Leninist, until the clampdown on such coverage in mid-August. The English language in Zimbabwean Times was set up 18 months ago, and has a circulation of, this report says, over 40,000. The Zimbabwean Times is the third black newspaper banned in Rhodesia, or the fourth rather, in the past 11 years. The earlier bans were issued by the previous white minority fascist government. Moscow News. Leonid Brezhnev, General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, the vanguard of liberation of the world, of the Soviet Union, and President of the Presidium of the USSR, Supreme Soviet, has greeted the people of Guinea on the 20th anniversary of their republic. The international countries in support of the liberation movements in South Africa and against apartheid, which means really what it sounds like, apartness, has ended in Bonn, West Germany. The Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko has returned to Moscow from New York, where he took part in the United Nations General Assembly and talked with the American side on limiting strategic defense weapons. Leaders of the German Democratic Republic of Syria, yes, the Democratic People's Republic of Syria, have criticized the Camp David separate deal concluded by the sellout agreement of U.S. imperialist, Zionist Israelis, and fascist Egypt. Leonid Brezhnev has congratulated the people of Guinea on the 20th anniversary of the Guinean Republic. The day was observed today all day. The message of support and guarantee and assurance of their liberation was transmitted by Radio Moscow. Political and economic independence and in progressive reform that it has made will be guaranteed to be maintained from all threats, both foreign and domestic, guaranteed the Soviet Union, the vanguard of world liberation. The message pointed out that the Soviet Union and Guinea championed the cause of world peace and liberation of Africa from colonialism and racism. Leonid Brezhnev, as I said, the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and President of the Presidium of the USSR, Supreme Soviet, said that he was confident that friendship and cooperation with two countries would continue forever. Prime Minister Kosygin, also of the Soviet Union, has sent his messages of congratulations on the occasion to the Prime Minister of Guinea. The International Conference in support of South Africa liberation movements and against apartheid closed today. It was attended by delegations from over 60 countries, including the Soviet Union, which is the avant-garde. Various international organizations were also represented. Among them were the United Nations and UNESCO. The countries condemned NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the military adventurers, aggressive expansionist fascist, imperialist lackeys of U.S. imperialism, and of course USA too, for supporting the racist regime. They both were condemned. Speakers stressed that racism and apartheid jeopardized peace and international security. They welcomed the solidarity of the Soviet Union and all other socialist allies of the Warsaw Treaty, with the African peoples fighting for national liberation. They voted unanimously that the Soviet Union and Cuba had proven to be the true friends of Africa and the Western imperialists led by USA, the enemies, in that the USA and her Western imperialists were on the wrong side of every question, and the Soviet Union and Cuba were on the right side of every issue. Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko returned to Moscow from New York today. He attended the General Assembly session and had talks on limiting strategic arms on Sunday, which were only useful. Andrei Gromyko had a meeting with the Secretary of State, Cyrus Vance, on Saturday. He met with Carter at the Gromyko-Carter meeting. He stated they had enough to complete the preparation of agreement on strategic arm limitation beginnings at least. Let us hope it's not too late before the hell of nuclear holocaust rains down upon North America. Though we are safe from it here, it gives us no satisfaction to think of Dr. Daniel Ellsberg as he addressed our congregation in San Francisco just yesterday, saying that USA will be a wasteland and a desert. Foreign Minister Gromyko of the Soviet Union Vanguard of Liberation and Carter also discussed reduction of armed forces and armaments in Central Europe and throughout the entire world. The President of Syria and the General Secretary of the German Socialist Republic, GDR, Communist, Modern East German Communist Party, has criticized a separate deal sellout between Israel and Egypt concluded at Camp David's sellout summit near Washington by Carter. At a reception in Berlin, where President of Germany is on a visit, it stated that the Camp David agreements in the Middle East do represent problematically an issue for even West Germany. This was a West German delegation that said that, excuse me. They do not provide for the withdrawal of Israeli aggressive fascist troops, the Zionist troops that occupy the West Bank of Jordan, nor the Gaza Strip of Egypt, or the southern part of Lebanon that has been conquered by military force of aggression. And they ignore the rights of all Palestinian people. President of East Germany reaffirmed that the determination of the parties to the confrontation front must strengthen the relations with the Soviet Union and other members of the socialist community. The front was formed by peace-loving countries such as Syria, Libya, Algeria, Democratic Yemen, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and even Saudi Arabia. The German Democratic Republic and the Syrian president was to visit the Soviet Union also. Great gains have been made for the Soviet Union in the Warsaw Pact Treaty, because of this aggressive act at Camp David. Serious fighting continues at Beirut this morning, this early hour of 8:30, between the phalangists, Christian fascists. Christians mostly all over the world are fascists except in Ethiopia, and the security forces. Tanks, artillery, and missiles are involved in the melee. Casualties are reported all throughout the country. The leaders are holding emergency meetings because there's great fear that any moment the Near East could break out into the spark that would lead to World War III, which would mean the end of U.S. society. Over 200 million of our beloved people there would die in less than 13 minutes. Started hostilities all over the country. Again, they are opposed to the presence of the Arab security forces in Lebanon, says the Christian security forces, rather, in Lebanon, by decision of the Arab League to normalize the situation in Lebanon. They want to bring in more reactionary elements to balance Syria and the Christian fascist militia that's upheld by Zionist Israel, which is just a false front. This is being presented and rejected by all freedom and peace-loving people. Vietnam has reaffirmed its alliance and its willingness to begin negotiations. Its alliance with the USSR and its willingness to begin negotiations with Cambodia on new relations. The foreign minister's statement says the Republic is proposals made last February remain in force. They provide for holding a meeting and for sending without delay in the border area. Both are to withdraw their troops so many kilometers from the border, about 80 kilometers. The foreign minister's statement accuses the regime of acting in the interest of the policies pursued by the reactionary regime of the nationalists that are now uphold in power in what should rightfully be called Cambodia, is formerly known as Cambodia. President Carlos Perez of Venezuela has accused the Somozan fascist regime of pursuing a policy of genocide in Nicaragua and has condemned USA for its assistance. Interesting enough that the President of Venezuela will be visiting our own beloved Republic of Guyana under the leadership of the Vanguard, PNC, and our Prime Minister Burnham very shortly. He has not yet stated, nor has the Parliament stated, what their decisions may have been in reference to this disputed territory on the border. Interviewed by Newsweek magazine, President Perez of Venezuela said his proposal that the United Nations enter into the situation of Nicaragua and utterly destroy the Somoza regime. He accused the U.S. of supporting dictator Somoza fully. Somozan soldiers have killed more than 20,000 bleeding citizens, and hundreds of thousands of people have left Nicaragua, said the President of Venezuela. This is a move, a striking move to the left, as President Venezuela, just 10 miles east of us. President Perez spoke sharply critical of U.S. policies in support of the dictatorship of Nicaragua and Somoza that was put in power by USA Marines when they invaded against the will of the people of Nicaragua some 44 years ago in 1933, 45 years now. An annual conference of the British Labour Party has opened. They have drafted resolutions submitted to the countries criticized the government's economic and social policies. They are against of Nicaragua and Somoza that was put in power by USA Marines when they invaded against the will of the people of Nicaragua some 44 years ago in 1933, 45 years now. An annual conference of the British Labour Party has opened. They have drafted resolutions submitted to the countries criticized the government's economic and social policies. They are against unemployment, inflation, and the growing cost of living. There are more than 3.5 million people jobless in England. Representatives of the various labor organizations intend to stand up against the government's policies for restraint in wage increases because the cost of living is growing much faster. And resolutions urge a reduction of Britain's cost of living. The Labour Party Prime Minister says he may have to resign. The polls show that Margaret Thatcher, racist who will remove all blacks, Indians, Asians from England, will be his successor. Chairman of the Communist Party, USSR, Prime Minister of Ethiopia has spoken highly of the relations and friendship and cooperation between Ethiopia and the Soviet Union. They said in the international broadcast that they had resumed, that they had built the best of ties between the Soviet people and the government of Ethiopia in a time of crucial social reform that Ethiopia was undertaking. One USA attempted to use Somalia, Eritrea, and the Ogaden. The social reform has taken place. Ethiopia has reoccupied its territory. The history of the Ethiopian revolution, the justice of it, has been established as a beacon light for all the world to see. Thanks to the assistance of the Soviet Union, said the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the National Democratic Socialist Revolution of Ethiopia has now reached a stage where it has become irreversible. Coal deposits are being explored in Mozambique by Soviet geologists who have been called into Mozambique by the Marxist-Leninist government of that progressive nation right next to the Union of South Africa. Specialists from the Soviet Union and other socialist countries give substantial assistance to Mozambique with various economic projects. The crew of the Space Lab have resumed with a powerful telescope. We're now into the 110th day, longest mission in space of any nation. The telescope has a mirror of 1/10 meters in diameter, which is bigger than the mirrors on the Earth. In space, observation produce more accurate results because the atmosphere does not interfere with them. During the day, the cosmonauts will also check the various platforms and other devices in a spacewalk. They have been in orbit for over a year now. for going on a half year now. This is their 110th day in orbit. World record of space endurance. The platform has been in orbit for over a year now, but this present crew has been in orbit for 110 days. The executive, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, has completed its work in the capital of Mongolia, People's Republic, ally of the Soviet Union. The meeting was attended by Bulgaria, Hungary, Vietnam, German Democratic Republic, Cuba, Mongolia, Poland, Romania, the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia. There was also a representative of Yugoslavia, which is not a member of the Council, but cooperates closely with the Warsaw Treaty. The executive discussed implementation of the comprehensive program of economic integration and expulsion of agitating mainland Chinese from Mongolia and Vietnam. It is a shame that the mainland communist Chinese have practiced such a good form of domestic communism and have such a horrendous, repugnant foreign policy. Let's hope that their statement, which you should have answered yesterday if you got the news correctly, that they said nuclear war is still absolutely inevitable but may be postponed. Let's hope that they put the emphasis upon postpone, though most scientists say that even within the year, nuclear war is likely. Meetings across the country of the Soviet Union, trade union committees, membership of over 150 million. The trade unions are the biggest organizations in this great vanguard nation of the USSR. They have rights guaranteed them by the Constitution of independence in their own finances and their own legislative affairs. The unions can initiate legislation. They can take part in drawing economic plans and decisions concerning an increase in pay, compensations, and management operations. They can change production goals, and they rate with nothing can be done in terms of production without the union's consent. Dismiss any worker. Workers guaranteed 3 years before it can be dismissed from any job to learn that position well. Somewhat different from the United States, where the unions have no rights at all, where the U.S. Army is presently threatening under President Carter to invade the railway companies, the railways, because they're striking for better conditions health-wise and wage-wise. Trade union committees distribute housing and control labor safety and administer the insurance funds that guarantee free health care, medical care, eye care, and education to all of the children of the trade union movement, the free trade union movement of the Soviet Union vanguard of liberation. Soviet specialists have designed a new type of boat for small and winding rivers that cannot be anyway matched by ordinary ships. The new diesel engine ship consists of 2 sections coupled with a special joint. Moving like a snake, it can negotiate any river on Earth. The new vessel of this type has been fully tested, and it can be used in any river and any rapids that exists on the Earth. That ends the major emphasis of the news for the day. Africa's far-right government has moved further towards fascism. The blacks are being faced by Ku Klux Klan provocations in Chicago, a gigantic march this Sunday. Blacks tried to defy the threats and marched en masse, trying to reach an equal number to the Klan, but the Klan still outnumbered the blacks by some 2 to 1, rallying in the northern part of Cicero, Chicago. Yes, this is something to see, the white knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Their robes on that were once commonplace only, we thought, 40 years ago. 40 years ago in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, but now in Chicago, Illinois, a so-called Mecca of liberalism. That ends my commentary of news. Loves and greeting to you. Study it well to avoid the extra 5 classes and 15 hours of study. Remember, put in the suggestion box the thoughts on how to improve and increase production and ways of making money, and also I need ideas on how we can have these great food festivals banquets when we have various guests so that everyone will eat exactly the same. We did not resolve the matter of chicken. As we told you, it takes 300 chickens to give each person a piece of chicken for one meal, whereas if you go the other way, you get 4 chicken meals from the meals as they are now planned. You can make your vote in the next People's Rally. We were sorry that matters got carried away, and we did not get to finish that matter. The father of a banished Jewish dissident, Vladimir Stepek, rejected his son after he announced his intention to immigrate to Israel and conducted some heinous acts and was forced to exile in the remote areas of the Soviet Union because he had done physical violence and damage to buildings by marking them with Zionist slogan signals. When his son called Solomon Stepak, who was once the Soviet News Agency TASS's main correspondent in Japan and China, an editor in a foreign language publishing house, and eventually as a Politburo-era aide, Jewish, who submitted the foreign press for the Kremlin leadership. The elder Stepak wanted his son to follow in his footsteps, but the two began to have arguments about the wave of Zionism that was sweeping the world after the Soviet Union defeated fascism in the Great World War II. The final break came in 1970 when Vladimir announced his intentions to immigrate to Israel. Solomon, the father, said he had connections in the security police and would oppose it. When Vladimir telephoned his father his birthday on last October, on Vladimir's 50th birthday, and said it was his son calling, the father replied, "I have no son." When Vladimir asked, "Who then am I?" his father replied, as a true citizen of the Soviet Union, "You are an enemy of the people." Thus ends the meeting and commentary of the news. Much love to you, and if you love your people, if you have any love for decency and justice, for the many that want to be free, your loved ones who now don't even act concerned, who when they see more joblessness and more dangers of genocide and concentration camps under Senate Bill 1437 that's now being passed, when they see the threat of nuclear war draw closer, they want this haven and want our sanctuary that we're promised here and elsewhere in the world. So make sure that you are doing your best. We've got to produce even harder, that was their request, to be able to get the advantages of the great offers and opportunities they have afforded. Much love. One last afterthought. Remind yourself of the socialist language class in Russian at 7:30, followed some bit later after a intensive study of language. Perhaps tonight we'll have Russian played all evening. We'd like to encourage the technicians to plan for that, because there had been scientific proof from the USSR, the vanguard of world liberation, that it is effective. After the language class, there will be a Technicolor film, beautiful film, on the solidarity of the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea, which has close ties with the Soviet Union, models its government and collectives after the Soviet Union, but is also close with the People's Republic of China. Absolute solidarity. In 20 years, when their entire nation was bombed back into the Stone Ages, they have rebuilt every bit of their country, and you will see such solidarity and such wholesomeness in their 16-hour scheduled day. You'll see joy on their faces and reflections of happiness and purpose that cannot be denied. Thank you. Much love.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Attention, Здравствуйте, товарищ. It's important that you listen to this announcement and listen to it very intently. Both the doctor and the medical doctor, the Soviet guest, who is a resuscitation specialist, that is, he has the greatest skill in the world of reviving people from the dead, said, and so did the Honorable Ambassador from the Soviet Union and Chief Press Secretary of the Guyana USSR Embassy. We must know our news that will help us get the job done quicker. He didn't say it would bar us. I won't tell you a lie. I never have. But he said it was important, as well as the cutting of the hair, because some of the Soviet so-called socialist nations have made an issue of hair. But when you get there won't be an issue, because there are Soviets with long hair and beards. But right now we want to look clean and groomed. But we have to study the news. We have to study the Constitution. The moment Gene Shakin and Sarah and whoever's working on the Constitution to get it down to simplified language, we have to know the news. And we must know the Soviet Russian language. So please do not get hostile to me. I'm only doing that which will be best for you. These people are talking about building a coliseum for us, a gymnasium for us, great entertainment and theater center. They're not interested in our money, and they will have guests come in. Fortunately, in the Soviet Union, the U.S. consular will not be able to come inside our Jonestown community. They will have to meet a Soviet delegate, as is required in USA, and that delegate will say that our people are healthy and there will be no need for interrogation of our people, which is a wonderful, wonderful breakthrough. So please know that we will be out away from people. We have cities around and opportunities for education in all levels and fields and skills and academic high levels of education. So please take this to heart. Talk language, talk news between your comrades. So, attention, attention. I can't remind you enough that our committee, the PNC, the doctor were reminded that we needed to be practicing Russian amongst ourselves, such as simple phrases, "Здравствуйте, товарищ." We can refine them when we get the English films. We'll have them down. And the important thing was the news. He was highly, highly impressed with the news. He said that would be our biggest opening, the news. So please talk the news back and forth and keep the property clean, keep the standards that the doctor maintained high. It's very absolutely important. I can't overemphasize the karate team, the basketball team, the musical renditions, and the Marxist-Leninism that you could do amongst yourself so you can answer questions in your tour of the Soviet Union. I beg you to listen to the news and go in the library and read it to be sure you have it down, because that was the one thing that said would sell us quicker, would move us more rapidly into our dream of dreams. So please take heart to the news and talk Russian amongst yourself and have that morale factor to do so. I beg you to do so, and keep the productivity up, because there'll be a Russian delegation coming all the way from Moscow, the highest people in government, to look at our project. The door is open. The door is already open, clear, wide open. So please take me to heart. Pick up papers, keep things clean. There needs to be more speed in our step. For work, I have been up for 2 nights, so excuse the sluggishness. I beg you, if you will, to do the best you can in that area. Speak Russian amongst yourself and news amongst yourself, not just to pass tests and to avoid 5 tests in 15 hours, but to be sure that you know the Soviet slant of the news. It's very, very essential. Much love to you, and be sure that any eye sore, you report it immediately so we can repair it and have things at apple pie order. Thank you for your love to the community of socialism, or your attempt to love, and I love you more than I could possibly tell you. I wouldn't be pushing myself at this terrible rate. Please, I beg you, it is not my idea, and cut your hair immediately. Cut your hair immediately, because the news copy in Yugoslavia and Poland, it did not appear in the Soviet Union, but it could be that some middle-class, middle-aged person would take that issue and divert. When you're there, you can wear all the weird beards or mustaches and hair that you want to. And even so, I think we can justify Al if he will put his hair into Indian style. So, if you will, please comply with this. Remember tonight, Russian language, and then following a tremendous documentary on the plight, short as it is, of the great heroic solidarity of the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, and maybe we'll have time for the plight of the black in British Isles. Thank you, and I love you more than I could possibly put in words. Thank you very much.